That's probably where they want to put me.
Right through here?
Behind the bars?
Yeah.
Good place.
Okay, right in through that door and sit. Take your You're here? Okay, hang on, I gotta close this door. This is a parole hearing for John LaForest. President Florence Holway, Bill Holway, Shirley Holway.
Do you want to speak now, Mrs. Holloway?
All right, sir. I am the victim in this rape case. Throughout the raping, which took place from midnight to 2 a.m. on Easter Eve, 12 years ago, throughout those 2 hours, I tried very hard to keep two aims in mind. One aim was, don't fight this. Keep alive. The second aim was, if you do manage to get out of this situation, you try to find some legal way to keep this man confined so that he won't be able to do to another woman what he has done to you. If he is proved to be a repeating rapist, are you going to give him his freedom? After a rape, you go on breathing, you go through the motions of living, but your soul has been invaded and despoiled. To have on top of you a heavy, hairy, sweaty, stinking animal who thrusts his organ into your inside, who pushes and pulls and tears, pushes and pulls and tears, is the ultimate horror. After only a few years, this man will be out of jail and free to rape again. I, in all probability, will be dead. It saddens me to leave a world where this can happen. Every 3 minutes, someone in our nation is raped. Raped in 91, the day before Easter, in a farmhouse in a small town in the country. About 8:30 or so, I started to get to bed, and there are various things I do. I put on the light at the end of the driveway, and I put on the porch light because I had a tenant who might come home. And I brushed my teeth and checked on my cats and climbed into bed and went to sleep. About midnight, I was awakened. There was a disturbance in one corner of my bedroom. And I raised my head up and looked, and this figure was coming toward my bed on the left side. And I thought, Bill? Now that can't be Bill, because Bill would never come into my bedroom without knocking. And I thought, no, this isn't Bill, it's got bushy hair and it's skinnier. And these two hands came out of the dark. And one of these hands went across my mouth, and the other one held the back of my head. And this voice says, shut up, shut your fucking mouth, which is no way for anybody to talk to an old lady. I let out one piercing scream, and those hands went around my neck and choked me. I was so surprised that this was happening. And I thought, here I am going to die. I'm not going to have a decent burial like Nella and Ginger and Polly and those other people. This is a heck of a way to go. And think of all the projects I've got that I'll never finish. And old people really are interested in their projects. And I thought of Archimedes. When the soldiers came in to kill him, he said, "Don't disturb my circles." We all have circles, and we don't want them disturbed. And then I looked at him as he was taking something off over his head. I thought, my God, this man's going to rape me, and I'm an old woman. So I got out of bed on the right side, and I walked to the foot of the bed, and I said, "Young man, I am an old woman, almost 76. His answer was to turn around and grab me and throw me on the bed and pull up my flannel nightdress and get on top of me and try to penetrate me. And he had to try to penetrate a lot before he got in. And I lay there and I thought, my God, this kind of thing, how could this have happened to me? And I said, "You're going to kill me, aren't you?" And I didn't want to die. I was going to be in Pirates of Penzance next Thursday night. He didn't answer. And presently he said, "Isn't this nice? Isn't this good? I ought to come every week." With that, he got off of me, turned me around so that I was on my stomach, pulled off my nightdress in 4 pieces and threw it on the floor, and then he sodomized me. And I thought, well, shucks, this is a new experience. Good night. And finally, I had my legs, my feet over his shoulders, and he was pushing down at me, and I pushed with my feet to get him away from me. Mistake! Because then he grabbed me around the neck again, and this time he hit me in the face, breaking several teeth, and then I was unconscious. When I came to, my left ear was dripping blood, and I said a Baha'i prayer. "O God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hands." And since the window was open, I laughed at Florence out of the window, and I thought, let her watch what's going on, and he can have the bag of bones that's left, and let him do what he wants to with it. I heard a tearing sound, and he had torn the cord off of a telephone which I just bought. And he took my 2 hands and tied them together in the middle of my back. And then he took my poor right leg and bent it up and tied the ankle to those knots. And there I lay, hog-tied. And I glanced at him, and he didn't have any clothes on except some socks. And off he went. And I just lay there and wondered what the dickens was going to be the end of this. And after a long while, he did come back, and he undid the ankle. And oh, what a relief it was to get that foot down. And then he went away again, and I heard the toilet flush. He cased the house. I don't know whether he took anything. Finally, finally he came back and undid the knots to my wrists. He got into bed and laid his head on my pillows, and then he took one of my legs and laid it across his body, I suppose as a kind of insurance. Well, I thought to myself, there may be some way for you to get out of this situation, Florence. Let's make a plan. Your left foot is ambulatory. You can get that out of bed. The trick will be getting your other foot off of his body without waking him up. So wait. I waited and waited. I think I prayed, but I felt, just take it easy. And after a while, I thought, it's the only chance you have, take it. So I slid my left foot out of bed, and by golly, the right one, when I looked down at it, was beside it. I suppose it was such a shock to be standing by that open window, stark naked, and feel, let's get out of this. And I thought, leave this room, don't latch the door. I went along to the door very quietly. I didn't latch the door, and I thought, go through the next room, don't stop at the telephone. I went through the next room, get to the boots that Roby gave you, and grab a long coat. I took off of the hanger by the back door a coat I'd had there for, years, but it was long and double-breasted, so it was warm. I found the boots, I thrust my feet into them, and I got down the steps into the back entry, and I looked for his car. No car. And of course, my having said to myself, run over to Billy's, was silly. You don't run with complete knees. You don't. So I got into my own car, and I always kept the key over the visor. I got it started and drove out of the driveway. And you can see Bill's house from this part, and I was so afraid he would chase after me. And these people had locked their doors, you see. So I went up on the breezeway step, and I rang the bell, and I prayed, dear God, don't let him come after me. Dear God, let somebody hear me. Dear God, give me a break. And suddenly I heard Squire bark.
I opened the door and she says, I've been raped. And you just never expect to hear anything like that.
And he's still in my bed.
Yes, and she didn't tell us that. I mean, we got her into the house, and I screamed to Billy, who was coming down the hallway anyway, and she just started in shaking, tremors. She couldn't stop, and we set her down and tried to warm her up, and after we had set her down, she said, he's still in my bed. I remember thinking, this isn't right, this just isn't right. Who would do that? I mean,
it's an unbelievable kind of experience.
Billy was ready to go out and get him. He just ran out of the house and grabbed a baseball bat. When he went out that door, I had visions of, he was going to just kill this man.
I can cover all the exits from right here. So I walk in. I can see the back kitchen door. I can see the courtyard doors. The light is on, illuminating the courtyard. And this is where I stay and wait until I see the police drive down the driveway.
Shirley wrapped me in a blanket, and then she tried to put some warm socks on my feet So she took off those boots, and the 3 children started coming down the stairs. This was Easter morning. They thought the Easter bunny had come.
We always leave these little jelly beans down the stairs, going to their baskets. You know, when they go down, they pick them up. And so they had their little baskets. They were picking up all their jelly beans, and they came down the stairs. And it was like, oh, please, you got to go back to bed. And they were talking about the Easter bunny. And I said, no.
I was on patrol, and I got a call of an assault, a sexual assault in progress. I was in the middle of town, and I knew where the Holway residence was, so it was a short response time.
They kept asking me questions, and I didn't know all the answers. I mean, she just constantly talked about everything that had happened, and it was all in spurts.
Everybody explained to me that that the perpetrator was in the home at the time, sleeping on the bed. So I went into the house.
I told them that I didn't know what Billy was going to be doing. I said I told him to wait outside. And we were so worried for Billy, too. Even Nana was like, oh, you know, you got a baseball bat in your hand and someone's just raped your mother, and what are you going to do?
The police come through the side entrance, and I illuminate this room. I put the bat down because I keep a gun on top of the cabinet. I came over, and I got my rifle. And I tell the police that's the main entrance to the bedroom. Now, if the police go in this door here, they don't know that he could be going out the other exits out the back. I told the policeman, well, I'll go around to one of them and I'll come through and unlock this door. I see there's a lump in the bed. I'm not sure what the lump is. It could be anything. And I turn the light on. And sure enough, there was something there. I open the door for the police. They both barge in and they push me aside right up to the wall. They go right in and they get him. They collar him right in the bed. You know, we'd moved down here to look after Florence. We'd moved down here to make sure that the place was maintained and she was looked after, and you know, I felt terrible. I felt awfully guilty. The fact that I hadn't told her to lock her doors and yeah, I felt awful guilty.
Wolfboro isn't too far away. It's only 13 miles, and presently I was in the hospital. And here was Dr. Adams, who's been treating my children for years, and he said, "We need evidence. Sign here."
Certain things they were asking her to, you know, get in this position and get in that positioning, and all the exams that they had to do was really another invasion of her privacy after what she'd already been through.
And Shirley slipped into the seat beside my bed where they had me laid out like a piece of meat. And she held my hand during the whole examination.
I know you were very uncomfortable with it.
Oh,
and
Lord.
I just told her this is necessary, and I think as long as somebody was there with you, you were okay.
My hand is cold as the
Oh, mine
devil.
is too.
Yeah.
They're both like ice.
Well, ever since I can remember, she said, "Hold that pose." I think that's probably just one of the things all the kids remember. Christmas or a birthday or whatever, she'd be doing watercolors and she'd just say, hold it right there, hold that pose. We always held the pose for a little while.
There's Billy. He was walking then. This was his first Christmas.
Wow, that was a very good dream.
I cooked in front of that fireplace when we had the hurricane, and they loved it. Probably was the most dangerous thing in the world. I'd moved in sleeping mats and so forth, and we were all bundled together there trying to keep warm. But kids love things like that.
I knew Billy in school, and he was always telling stories about the strange things Florence did as they were growing up.
Oh, you can do a million things with kids. And I did the water lilies on the side of the tub for them. Mm-hmm. Those are from actual water lilies that we got at the pond. And they were always bringing home something and putting it in the bathtub, like a fish or a turtle. And of course you can't keep fish happily in a bathtub. And then I'd say, let's take our things to the brook where they put things back.
I could tell you all kinds of stories. I guess something that's always stuck with me is don't be afraid. There was a German Shepherd dog down the street, and my sister was afraid of walking home because of the dog. And after a snowstorm, Florence said, well, we better go down and get your sister. So as we were walking down the street to meet my sister, Florence picked up a stick that had fallen out of a tree during the storm. And we walked a little ways further, and the dog jumped out over the snowbanking, and Florence hit it with the stick.
Oh, I didn't really hurt it.
He said they never saw the dog again. And
I did frighten it off.
And he just tells about things like that in a rather proud way, I think. So I think you taught him a lot, just in the way you behaved. It just tore me up that she would come to church and watch the kids for that Easter program. And she looked so nice. She came in and she smiled. We were just so focused on that program when we got in there with the kids that we didn't discuss it. But everybody seemed to know. There was just such a silence in the church.
I had worn a hat because I wanted to cover up as many of my bruises as I could, and my throat was very swollen, so I couldn't reach the notes in the hymns. But he and Gary had just gotten a bed into his dining room for me, and he made it to church just as the service started, and he slipped into the end seat and took my hand, and I had such a feeling of safety and relief. And of course, I was very surprised. I was alive. And I could see the Easter lilies and the hyacinths. And there were cyclamen. And I thought, gee, the flowers are beautiful. And every morning since then, of course, I wake up and I look out my window and it is a surprise. Here's another day. Let's see what we can do with this one. After you're raped, you're in trauma. I didn't come out of trauma, you see, for 4 days. By gosh, I went here and there, and I just did the next thing, just as if I was the old Florence. Pirates of Penzance, we started rehearsing in January, and I had rehearsed so much it never even occurred to me not to keep on with it. And of course, I wanted to sing my little solo.
The question is, had he not been a thing of beauty, would she be swayed by Claire's keen sense of duty? For shame, for shame, for shame,
the next day, I went to Pirates of Penzance. And the next day, I went again. And then, at 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up screaming. And I sat up on the side of my bed. The tears were coming from my ankles. And I cried. The dog howled. Shirley came and put an arm around me. I cried more. Billy came, and then I really bawled. This went on for 4 hours and more. I didn't realize what a rape does to a person. You forget your keys. You forget anything you put down or where you've put it. You look over your shoulder constantly because someone's coming around the corner after you. Your life sort of falls apart. You're not the same person you were. That's all there is to it.
After this rape, she couldn't come back to the house. She was living with us. She had lost her drive to paint, her creativeness, and she was just dwelling on the rape. There was screaming nightmares in the morning.
Did I scream?
Yeah, she had awful screaming nightmares.
Yeah, the first week you did. You'd wake up and Billy'd come down.
I was always late for work because before I'd even leave the property, I'd make sure that everybody was all right, that the doors were locked, that the phones were working, that the gun was loaded, that everything was, we may have overreacted, but we were really horrified that this kind of thing really happens. Our whole lives were changed because of this. I had a very good job and a very understanding boss, and I took a lot of time, and I had a lot of flexibility, but after a while that caught up with me, and it cost me my job. But it was my priority. I felt I had to be home.
Well, they don't bring all the stuff in. I guess I better get in the kitchen. By this time, I had gotten through my first month after my rape. I had been waiting patiently for a court case, which I thought was going to be the last of July. After my escape from the rapist, when I heard a voice say, "We've got him," I had a feeling of intense relief. The monster would never be able to do to another person what he had done to me. How naive can you get?
I can remember when I went to her house, and we sat down at the kitchen table, and Bill was there, and Shirley was there, and Florence was there. And I remember I had to tell her about a plea agreement.
Florence says, "Sue, I don't think you'll have a court case." And I said, "Why not? The county attorney wants to have a plea bargain, and his letter for the plea bargain is in the mail."
And I remember she stood up, and she was in a walker at that time, and she was so upset.
I was indignant. I was mad. The plea bargain offered this man 12 years for admitting that he raped and sodomized me. And if he would admit that he had done these things, burglary and false imprisonment would not be included. And the fact that I was attacked and choked wasn't even mentioned. He should have been sentenced on 5 counts
this guy that has raped my mom, he really isn't going to get the full consequences of his actions. We were all flabbergasted.
I found out that the county attorney had all the say in the matter of a rape. And I said, Susan, what can I do? Well, my advice to you is to see the county attorney Fitzgerald personally as soon as possible. Shirley handed me the phone. She said, somebody will go with us. Get who you can. And it was then about 10 o'clock. So I called people. I called people until 20 minutes after 2 a.m. And instead of waiting until 6 o'clock for my exercises, I did them at 5 o'clock. And I wrote a petition. I wrote it in pencil. I put it in my typewriter and typed it, and I had it in my hand when I got into Shirley's car at 7:30. At the traffic circle, we met 2 other cars and a truck, and several other people were there who wanted to go in with me.
A lot of the neighbors got involved in it, and we all went right up to the courthouse and made a ruckus.
I stood on my 2 crutches, and Mr. Fitzgerald said, do sit down, Mrs. Holway. I said, I'd rather stand. And I said to him exactly what I had in this petition. My anger and indignation at this having been done without my knowledge, and of course why I wanted a court case. Oh, it's slippery as an eel. I'm the daughter of a lawyer. They are slippery people.
Since I can remember, she's been telling off school boards and officers and judges and anybody else that told her that this is the way things are and this is the way things are going to be, and she would always stand up and say, well, you know, that's not right. That's not fair. That's not the way it should be.
And I realized I was up against a stone wall with this man. That county attorney simply said, a plea bargain is what we'll do because I have no evidence. There wasn't any semen. I thought everyone knew that rape is not a sex crime. It has nothing to do with sex or semen. It's a case of violence and hatred. You see, this man is not up with us. He is somewhere in the far distant ages. The assailant uses his sex organ as a weapon. I was left bleeding. And he went into this bathroom and he flushed something down the toilet. Bill found that in the septic tank. But it had been in there too long. Here, this was July, so I couldn't prove it was his.
While he was raping you, could you tell if he had a condom on?
No.
Could you tell us why you wouldn't be able to tell?
I don't think I've ever been raped with a condom.
The county attorney felt that because he didn't have some physical evidence, it would become very difficult for him to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That was the basis for his decision in agreeing to a plea agreement.
I just had no idea that this is the way things were handled. We thought this would be a great trial, and that's what we were hoping for. I mean, we did no question in our mind that there would even not be a trial.
And I thought, good Lord, I can't tell a judge and I can't tell a jury what happened to me, but I can tell the newspapers. I can tell anyone who will listen. And by golly, somewhere I'll connect with someone who has the authority to do something about this terrible situation.
Florence called me at the paper. I was working for a paper called the Wolfboro Times. I was a college intern. I was 20 years old. She refused to speak to anyone other than me. She had been given my name by someone who knew my family. And I called her, we connected, and the next day I went out and spent several hours with her, and she was very emotional at that time. She was very nervous about going public, but she felt it was something she needed to do. So we talked about the story. I went back, I wrote it, I took it to my editor, and the paper was very nervous about running the story. They just didn't feel it was necessarily appropriate material for us because we were a small town, sort of family-friendly paper. They did agree to run it, but they buried it inside the paper. Within, I believe, a few days, it got picked up by the AP, and there was a lot of media coverage, and it started popping up all over the place in other papers. But it became apparent very quickly that it was going to be a big story.
Well, let me say first that I had no idea what it was like to be in the media. You don't have a minute.
This man raped me, and he's going to get just a few years. And the same hands I see it now.
The phone rang almost constantly, and I'd be trying to figure out when she could fit the next one in.
I didn't refuse people. Anybody who asked me a question, I answered. The Boston Globe came, and another man from Associated Press, the handsomest man I've ever seen. He just had to walk in and he had my heart.
An elderly Alton woman is tonight telling her story of rape to the world. 72-year-old Florence Holway is crying out for justice.
These two hands came out of the dark. It was just like a horror movie.
The alleged rapist is working out a plea bargain.
They give him a few years in good behavior, and he's out and he's raping again.
Florence Holway says she wants the possibility of getting a maximum 45-year sentence. The county attorney says that he's got to do what's practical.
We are lessening the probabilities of any lesser sentence being imposed.
Holway's neighbors and friends aren't buying it.
I don't think that's anywhere near enough time.
Oh, I think 20 years, starting 20 years and then on.
If there's any way that we people who have been raped can stir up the apathy in this nation, for crying out loud, do it. Come on, Chef.
Publicity did come thick and fast when it came, and of course this is what I wanted. I thought if there was enough publicity that the county attorney would change his mind and give me a court case. And you'd be surprised at the number of phone calls he had. He had thousands of phone calls, and everybody was telling him that he was being a jackass, but he would not change his mind. And he held out. Okay, I'll take those.
You're not going to look at the prices?
Well, no.
You trust me.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. And the pants are over on the other side, I think.
We're such a small town, and everybody knows everybody. And people had heard that there was a lady that was raped, but nobody knew who it was until we went public. And then when they realized that it was Granny,
We'll go out and see if
they just couldn't believe it. It's almost like it didn't happen until they knew who it happened to.
It certainly changed the attitude of Alton forever. People lock their doors in Alton now. If they see strange people on, let's say, on the roadway in the middle of the night or noises, they call the police now. A lot of the women became very frightened in town.
That's good. Thank you.
Bye now. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
I never handled a gun until this happened, and of course I learned to use one, and I have my own, and I know just how to load it, and I know how to use it. And I'm sure if anybody tried to break into that house, I wouldn't be asking many questions, just because of that. You can't trust. You just can't trust anybody. You almost feel like, so ashamed of yourself that you have to do that, and that you're there with a gun ready to shoot somebody. I mean, that's it's just sad.
I worked very hard to do what I could do legally to prevent this plea bargain from going through. And my victim's advocate said, what would help the most is getting letters from the people of Alton about how you have changed and how our town has changed because of what has happened to you. And we'll present those to the judge, and they are the only thing that will make a difference. I bet that doggone Judge O'Neill never even read them. When a plea bargain is decided, the victim can speak. And by gosh, I speak. It was a hot day in July. The flies were buzzing in and out. There were no microphones that worked. And I talked about 40 minutes. I used up a tape.
My opinion at the time of her was saying, if this goes to trial, this would be an excellent witness.
I was sort of dreading this whole experience, and I was just trying to get through it. I knew how it was going to come out. The judge talked to that man for 15 minutes, asking him if he was sure that he wanted to plead guilty. And what was he going to do in jail all that time? And he was quite friendly with him. He didn't ask me how I was going to get my life back together. Massachusetts. I didn't want to have anything to do with being married to anybody until I was about 28. And then I thought, shucks, I'd better make up my mind and marry somebody because I wanted a family. And in uniform, Mr. Holway looked good, and he had a Ford convertible. I decided when I married that my life had started over, and I made a portfolio of my baby starting at 11 days. At 6 he wakes up and he's nursing. And then 8:45 he's having his orange juice. 9:30 he's having a bath, and that's the bassinet my mother brought from New England. At 10, he's getting his cereal. And at 11, I put him out and let the sun get at him. At 1 o'clock, I walked over to the store and bought raw milk because I was nursing this child, you see, all the time. But I was drinking raw milk to do it. And at 6, I gave him baby food. And at 7, here he is in his crib. And those are the little quilts that Nanny Chase made for him. But his father has taken him out, and he's giving him his last bottle at 10.
I haven't seen these.
You haven't ever seen these?
They're really wonderful.
I was so enthusiastic about all of this.
I guess.
I just thought that baby was the most wonderful thing in the creation. And then, one day, Mr. Holway decided that he had had enough of marriage. And I had at that time 3 little boys and a girl in a crib. Billy was really a mistake. Best mistake I ever made.
Has your relationship with Bill and Shirley changed because of the rape?
I don't think so. You see, when I got to be 80, I had been having trouble with a left ankle. This is the same left ankle that this girl has taken care of all these years. And so I went into a hospital and got a complete hip on this side. The next day after I had it, I was up going back and forth to the bathroom and walking on my foot, which swelled up to about 3 times. And so the doctor said, "Oh, you're doing beautifully with your hip, but my God, what is this?" And he rebuilt this foot. And that foot lasted me until just recently. 17 years I walked on that rebuilt foot. And then he did a knee. After each of these operations, these people took me into their house, bringing me salads and stuff, and I was knitting on a sweater for my
I wish you'd answer the questions. For God's sakes, cut to the chase here. I don't want to hear a life story about your operations. Has it affected our relationship or not? Yes or no? And how?
You won't give me a chance to tell him.
Well, shit, they're going to run out of tape before you get to the answer. The guy's falling asleep with his earphones on over there.
You see, that's just the way he was when I went the first time. And he hasn't changed a bit. All you had to do was have some kind of a problem and he busts up.
I'm not busted up. Just answer the poor people's question here. They don't want to stay for dinner. They bought us lunch. He wants to go see his aunt. 10 years he hasn't seen this aunt. It's closing in on dinner time. You're only on the second hip joint, for God's sakes. Come on. Move along.
He hasn't changed. But we get along fine.
And he loves her dearly.
Come on, Florence.
I can't stand it. I love him, and he loves me, and we get along fine. It took 5.5 months of staying at Bill's house before I could come over here and be comfortable. I took all the paper off the walls. I redid the ceiling, or Byron, my second son, redid the ceiling. Oh, I had a locksmith come. I have bolt locks on that door, and that door, and that door. Now, you pull it back this way, and then you have to slam it, and then get it to come out and go in its hole. And you can't open it now, you see. And then you make it go in there. They see it caught. Now you can't get through that one either. And then I can go to sleep and feel that I'm going to be there in the morning and everything's going to be all right.
We did go down to the firing range, and Florence learned how to load a .38 and shoot a .38, and actually it's a pretty good shot. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, to have a gun and give it to your mother to protect herself. You know, but I think it's the right thing for us.
The impact of this on our family is one of horror. Our whole way of living has changed. We live in fear. Not only in fear of attack, but in fear that the justice system will not protect us from attack. I was raped twice, once by my assailant and again by an inept justice system. My entire case was mishandled, and the poor system is putting back on the street the assailant after only a few years. He will be 37 years old and avid to attack any female he can corner.
Mr. LaForest, had you ever committed any acts like this before this case?
No.
Nothing like it?
No.
Well,
as far as, I mean, yeah, as far as, like, say, if you're from what I understand, if you want to have sex and your spouse doesn't want to have sex, or your girlfriend doesn't want to have sex, and you kind of woo her into it, that's a like a passive-aggressive rape or something like that. And
but this was an extremely violent and way in the outer edges of the sexual offense. It isn't anything like what you're talking about. I don't know, you describe it as a passive-aggressive or passive-aggressive behavior towards a spouse or a girlfriend or something like that.
No, I said that's...
But let me just finish. Where did this come from? Your comments are not that helpful to us in understanding whether or not you understand what you did.
Oh, I understand what I did.
Have you ever had a polygraph?
Yes.
Regarding that question as to whether or not you have other victims?
No.
What causes a rapist to act? It definitely is not sex. In my case, the man's venom released on me was due to hatred, pure and simple. Thousands of these dangerous, vicious beings prowl in our midst. It is, in my mind, not justice or even good sense to allow this assailant to be loose in society, ever. What kind of people make the laws that allow this?
Yes, sir.
6,266 signatures are now in the hands of this committee. Signatures that support tougher sentences for convicted rapists. The public outcry for change stems from the story of Florence Holway, a 76-year-old.
The hearings not only educated the committee, but educated the public, because it was very high profile. And it was really Florence Holway's case that drew attention to this crime, that made the legislature and the public decide that it was time to do something about it. And the public demanded that something be done about it.
I put down 25 minutes. Florence, you can't have 25 minutes. There are 30 people going to talk here. You can't have more than 10 minutes. I said, well, I'll just leave it just in case. And you know what? Senator Frazier called me first to talk. And I stood up and I wondered, well, now, Florence, these people you're talking to are legislators and senators. They have some power. And I thought, let's go to town, kid. And I said, there's some kind of myth rampant that the female is inferior to the male. And that's a lot of nonsense. The senators and the legislators laughed. I had my audience.
This man is a dangerous criminal, and from my point of view should be in a cage for the rest of his life to keep him away from society.
People that would never have been able to relate to this crime related to her. And Florence talks in great detail. She was able to talk, which is very unusual for a victim of a violent crime, to be able to sit before someone and talk about something so invasive and so personal.
When a woman is raped, something is taken from her that's irreparable.
When she told the story, there was not a movement, not a sound, because people were really enthralled with what she had to say. And I don't think there was anyone in the room that wanted to stop her after 10 minutes.
You have to take into consideration that the people in the legislature are a bunch of conservative Republicans who hang on to the status quo like grim death. It's a national scourge. It's like a sickness. And until we do something about stopping it, the women of our nation are really taking a beating.
Florence Holway's crusade is far from over. At a victim's vigil, she told an audience, I wasn't leading him on. For her, the new laws are still not enough.
As a result of her courage and telling her story, we did change the laws. They increased the penalties from 7.5 to 15 years for a first offense to 10 to 20 years. If you were convicted twice, it's now 20 to 40. And if you're convicted 3 times, it's mandatory life without parole. 3 strikes, you're out. That was huge. The sexual offender registry that was created as a result of Florence's case will affect John LaForest, and he will have to register for the rest of his life.
Now, there is no plea agreement that's done in this county unless the victim has had some say, is aware of it, and if they don't agree with it, it's not accepted. I think when history looks back, Florence is going to be known. It's going to be, this woman was instrumental in making the changes, not only in the legislature, but in the actual minds of people and how you approach a victim.
And they were all patting me on the back because I've changed the laws. I cried. There was not a thing done in that whole ad hoc committee of 10 people that was done for prevention. A rapist does not stop if he thinks it's going to be 7.5 years, and he's not going to stop if he thinks it's going to be 10, because it isn't enough.
Florence, I don't think, really realizes how instrumental she has been, but she was able to stand up there and be in the forefront, and the average everyday person, whether he was a construction worker or a doctor or a shopkeeper, would say, that could be my mother or my grandmother or my aunt. She brought attention to the issue. Not only did she bring attention, but she brought action.
Hello, how are you?
Florence is kind of my hero. To be a woman her age, who's never had to face those kinds of issues, and to come out how she did fighting she's just ultimately amazing to me.
Well, I wish you luck.
Well, thank you.
You need luck, and you look good.
Thank you. The woman who was raped was able and strong. Steadily now she deteriorates. She has lost her peace of mind for the rest of her life. It was taken, stolen from her, and buried forever.
I don't think Florence is healed. I don't think my wife is healed. I know I'm not. You live with it. You live with it. Every day is a little bit better, but it never goes away.
She'll never be happy. Nobody will be happy, really. There's just really no way to deal with it that's going to keep people happy in this civilized world.
Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hands. Thou art the greatest. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from God.
I don't know if he'll get paroled.
He will not suffer thy foot.
We'll go down, and what happens is going to happen. We really won't have a lot to say about it, I don't believe.
God is thy Savior. God is thy help upon thy right hand.
Florence will have her say, but as far as Shirley and myself are concerned, they won't ask us our opinion. They won't ask us to say a thing. So, I'll just have to hold my feelings, and I'll walk in and support Florence, and we'll walk out.
But they must...
Get your ass up, and let's get going, dear. Come on, let's boogie. We'll point ourselves in the right direction, and we'll go. All righty?
Shoes.
Yes, shoes. All right. Shirley, do you know where this place is that we're going?
Well, I don't know how to get anywhere, Del.
That's good.
We could find Supreme Court, but that wouldn't be it.
Okay. Ah, God.
Got all your notes and everything in your purse?
No.
You're all set.
Second set, too.
Just stay focused and stay to the point, Florence, and you'll be just fine.
Try.
You'll do fine.
I would say that's where we're going, right there. Anybody want to put Beth on that? Well, what are you going to do?
She doesn't have her leg down. There you go.
You got me? Yeah,
I sure am a lot of trouble.
Sure are. I don't know what the hell we can do about that.
We're all set.
No.
Oh, we're all set?
Yeah.
Follow that way.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All righty.
The premise of the parole board in all of these cases, sex offense cases, generally is we try never to max anyone, especially sex offenders, because to us that's more dangerous than giving someone parole under very, very strict circumstances. By doing what we do and following the program that we do, we find that the public safety is well protected under the circumstances in almost all cases. Do you want to speak, Mrs. Holloway?
I didn't want a plea bargain, so I went public. And one of those reporters was from Maine, and when she left me the clippings of the Fleming case in Maine. I looked at these clippings and I was shocked. This man, Fleming, had raped 2 women and was serving 10 years for each one. After he'd been there 15 years, they decided to let him be free. But it wasn't very long before Fleming got himself a pickup truck. And he followed a 15-year-old girl who was on a bicycle until he tipped her over.
I'd like to get out.
As she had fallen and hurt her shoulder, she thought when this man stopped with his truck, he was going to help her. And he took that girl into his truck, cut off all her clothes, raped her, and cut her throat. I was very upset with this case. In the courtroom, a psychiatrist stood up and said, "This man, Your Honor, will doubtless go back to his former antisocial behavior. Why would a judge let a man out when he knew he was a danger to society?" Now, considering the decision...
Florence, I think that if you just allow me to go a little further, I can answer almost all of your questions.
All right, sir.
Okay? This man has voluntarily done the sex offender program. It is an intensive program of 1 year, and they say that he's completed the program in a proper manner.
Has he been examined by a psychiatrist?
That I don't know. I don't think he has yet. We do have very, very intensive supervision when they go out. Our recidivism rate for repeat offenses, now, and just keep that in mind, for repeat offenses is 2%, which is really, really very, very good.
Well, I have never heard of any remorse he might feel.
Well, you may not have, and we have not heard yet, but we may. Have you heard everything that she has said?
Yes, I have.
All right. What do you think the sexual offender program did for you?
Well, I went beyond that.
Well, go ahead.
I went to the Summer House program for drugs and alcohol, and I did the victim impact, and I saw her on the tape, and I developed a sense of empathy. I understand what empathy means. I don't see why any of us do it. I'm talking about everybody in general, because everybody creates victims and they don't even realize it. From calling names to thinking bad about them, or talking bad about them behind people's backs.
I think that you should try to confine your comments to your experience in the sexual offender program. I'm not interested in what your opinion is on the daily mistakes that people make within the normal bounds of conduct.
Right.
I'm interested in the rape of a woman in this case. There's a huge difference, and I want to understand that you know that difference.
No, I know that difference.
Well, we'd like to hear you speak about it.
As it's wrong. It's downright wrong. I mean,
I think that the bottom line is that even in your parole write-up, you really don't speak about the victim in this case. Given the seriousness of this offense and what an aberration it was for you, given your history before this, I think we're a little troubled about letting you out again without knowing, as Ms. Holloway herself suggested, that a psychiatrist says that you don't have a risk of reoffense, that even you say you don't have a risk of reoffense, which you haven't said.
I was told never to contact the victim, never to...
Well, that may be true directly to her, but you could certainly have expressed remorse in more specific terms and empathy in more specific terms than I've heard you do.
I am very remorseful, excuse me. I'm very remorseful, okay? But me sitting here and telling you that I'm very remorseful, I'm sure that you've heard it all. The only thing that I can do is live as though I'm very remorseful. That's the only thing that I can really do is show.
Well, you shouldn't minimize the value of your words, because we've read an entire sheet of everyone's words about this case, and it's all we have to go on, and we're not that cynical. Your words do matter, and they do count, and you should use them to express whatever remorse you have.
The only thing I can do is just say, yes, I am very remorseful, I'm sorry.
You haven't said you were sorry to me.
I am sorry. I'm very sorry.
Well, it's taken 12 years to hear you say it.
You've let it slip a couple of times that you understand that you're a victim in certain cases. I wouldn't doubt that at all, but that's not what we're interested in.
Right.
Right. And I think that there's a gap there that leads to problem behavior when you're released. That's my opinion.
Basically, we are not quite satisfied yet with all the information that we have. We're going to request further information in the form of a polygraph test, in the form of a much more detailed report before we feel comfortable with making any type of decision as to your release.
I don't know where Bill is.
It's right there.
Right there, okay.
Maybe he didn't stay and hear what we said.
No, I don't think he did. It's too much for him.
Thank you, dear. Well, we all should have a drink.
Oh, we don't need one now.
Looks different with his haircut. His hair used to come down to here on him. And he was clean. Evidently, they make him take showers. Somebody asked me if I thought they were going to let him go, and I said, yeah. And I think the justice system is for the birds.
We were very naive about the justice system when this all started, Florence. We thought that it would all be taken care of.
That's right.
We've had a rude awakening all along the way.
We have had. Well, there's two things I'm awfully sorry I lost through that happening. And one was my teeth, and the other was my peace of mind. You can't have everything.
Is it locked?
No, I unlocked.
Did you? How'd you do it?
Certainly did it.
We found him under a cottage.
Yeah, it was
Abandoned.
abandoned kitties. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Well, we've kept him today. It just gives us a little more time before we worry.
Yes, as Bill was saying, if he'd only had the sense to kill him when he was here. But we didn't, because we didn't know. We were naive. And he's sorry, but my gosh, I'm glad he didn't. Because if he had, he'd be in jail. That's the way things work. All he has to have to do is murder that jerk.
That's just not what people do.
I just don't want him out there repeating, and I guess this is the last time I'll have to.
No, he's got another parole hearing they'll set up before his maximum time.
I thought he was going to be out today.
Well, I thought they were going to give it to him,
Somebody asked me, what can you do to be safe? I am no more safe now in this farmhouse than I was 12 years ago. I had no control, and I don't. But I certainly stirred up things. All right, I'll sing before Bill gets in here because he'll kill me. When a dream is born in you with a sharp and staggering pain, and you know the dream is true and lovely with no flaw nor strain, then be careful lest with sudden clutch you hurt the delicate thing you prize so much. Dreams are like a bird that mocks, flirting the feathers of his tail. When you seize at the salt box, over the hedge you see him sail. Old birds are caught neither with salt nor chaff. They watch you from the apple bough and laugh. Poet, never chase the dream. Laugh yourself and turn away. Mask your hunger. Let it seem small matter if he come or stay. But when he nestles in your hand at last, close up your fingers tightly and hold him fast. Good philosophy.